Hello again, welcome back to Mr. Ace Math. This lesson is on the Pythagorean Theorem. Some stuff you should know before you begin are how to use exponents, how to calculate square roots, how to solve equations, and how to use inverse operations. So make sure you know those and let's get started. So first of all, what exactly is the Pythagorean Theorem? The Pythagorean Theorem is for right triangles only. Like this one, for example. And it's used to determine any missing side of a right triangle. Let me specify. Any missing side. So if you have two sides and you're missing the third, you can use the Pythagorean Theorem and it will help you calculate the missing side. It says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And a lot of people just wonder, oh my god, what does that even mean? Because they don't know what a represents, what b represents, and what c represents. Well, it's pretty straightforward. If you know what they represent, you'll have no problems at all. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. C represents the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is directly opposite the right angle. So here we have our right triangle, right? This whole thing is the right triangle. This is our right angle. The hypotenuse is a side directly across from it. Now you can see a triangle a whole bunch of different ways. And it doesn't matter which way it turns. This side is still the hypotenuse. This is the right angle, so the hypotenuse is directly across from it. We could turn it this way. Our right angle is over here now. And this side is the hypotenuse. And back to where we started. Here's our right angle, and here's the hypotenuse. It's really important that you know exactly how to find the hypotenuse. People see it differently sometimes, and they totally forget that the easiest way to determine the hypotenuse is just to find where the right angle is and then look directly opposite it. And the hypotenuse is also the longest side. Now let's talk about A and B. A and B are the sides that are called your legs. And those are the sides that create the right angle. In this case, these sides, those are our legs. Now again, we can turn the triangle any which way. Those are still our legs. If we turn it this way, those sides are still our legs. And if we turn it back to the original, those are still our legs. Because no matter how we turned it, those were the sides that make up your right angle. So let's take a look at our first example. Whenever we're using the Pythagorean Theorem to find the missing sides of a right triangle, we should always make sure that we start with the formula on top. That way we can plug in any values that we need to directly underneath the letter. So let's start with trying to find the hypotenuse because it's pretty much the most straightforward thing to find. We just find our right angle, look directly across, and that's going to give us our hypotenuse. In this case, it's x. So underneath c, I'm going to put x. So here we have x squared. Now the other two sides I have are my legs because they are the sides that make up the right angle. What I prefer to do, it doesn't matter if we make the 5 centimeters A or we make the 12 centimeters A because addition's commutative. It doesn't matter. But I normally like to put the smaller number as my A and the larger number as my B. So I'm going to plug in 5 for A, so I have 5 squared. And then my other leg is B, and that's going to be 12. So that'll be 12 squared. And then I just bring down my symbols. So now I've got 5 squared plus 12 squared equals x squared. Well, first of all, what's 5 squared? That's just 5 times 5, which is 25. What's 12 squared? That's 12 times 12, which is 144. And x, I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to bring that down. And then I bring down my symbols. So now I've got 25 plus 144 equals x squared. So now I can add on this side 25 plus 144. And when I add that, I'm going to get 169. And here I still have x squared, so I'll bring down x squared, and I'll bring down my equal sign. Now, if x squared equals 169, what would x be? In other words, how would I go about finding the number that I multiply by itself that will give me x squared? Well, in order to cancel out a square, and that's how we do it, we find the square root of both sides. The square root and a square cancel out, and that leaves me with x by itself, which is what I want. And the square root of 169 is 13. So my answer is x equals 13 centimeters. And remember what that means. We were looking for the value of x. So if x equals 13 centimeters, that means that the length of our hypotenuse is 13 centimeters. And remember, the hypotenuse is the longest side, so you should make sure that after you do all of your work, that your hypotenuse is always longer than either side. How about this example? Again, we're starting with our formula on top, and we'll plug in where we can. And remember, the best thing to do is to try and plug in the hypotenuse first, because it's very straightforward and very easy to find. I just look for my right angle box, and I look directly across it, and that's going to tell me my hypotenuse. In this case, it's W. So underneath C, I'm going to put in W. Now, I have my two legs here. I recommend writing the smaller number as your A. So we're going to plug in for A, 3. So that's going to be 3 squared. And for B, that's our other leg, which here is 9. So we'll plug in 9. And then I just bring down my signs. So now I've got 3 squared plus 9 squared equals W squared. Well, now what do? I square whatever I can. What's 3 squared? That's going to be 9. What's 9 squared? That's going to be 9 times 9, which is 81. And then W, I don't know what that is, so I just bring it down as it is, and then I bring down my symbols. This part I can add. So now I'm going to have 9 plus 81, which is 90. W squared, still don't know what it is. I bring that down, and then I bring down my equal sign. So now I've got 90 equals W squared. This one is more difficult than the last because the other number had a perfect square. 169 was a perfect square because the square root was a whole number. This one does not. But remember, in order to get W by itself, I have to find the square root of both sides. So now, my square root and my square will cancel. I'm left with W. And that equals the square root of 90. And when we do that, we're going to get roughly 9.5 feet. Whenever you try to find the square root of a non-perfect square, you're going to get a decimal that goes on and on. So for the most part, we're going to be rounding to the nearest tenth, but make sure you read the question for whatever your teacher asks you. If they ask you to round your answer to the nearest tenth, then round to the nearest tenth. If they ask you to round to the nearest hundredth, round to the nearest hundredth. But what we're focusing on now is how to find the missing side. So what we're saying is W equals 9.5 feet. What we're saying is that the hypotenuse here is 9.5 feet. So how about this example? Let's start it exactly the same way as we started the others. Let's try and find the hypotenuse. And what's the best way to do that? Well, we look for our right angle box, and our hypotenuse is directly across from it. So our hypotenuse is 20, so we put that under C. Well, what do I have over here? I have my leg here and my leg here. I know that this leg is 8, and I don't know what this is, but we have the variable f to represent it. So let's plug this in for A, and let's plug this in for B. So now we've got A is 8, B is f, and C is 20. All I should do now is bring down my signs. So I've got A squared plus f squared equals 20 squared. And I should square whatever I can. A squared is going to be 64. F squared, I don't know what f is, so I can't square it, so I'll bring down f squared. And 20 squared is going to be 20 times 20, which is going to give me 400. And then I'll bring down my signs. So now I've got 64 plus f squared equals 400. But remember, the whole point of doing this is to try to solve for f. So we have to get f by itself. In order to do that, the best thing to do is to get rid of 64. And how do I do that? I subtract 64 from this side as well as the right side. These 64s are going to cancel, and then 400 minus 64 gives me 336. And then here, I just bring down my f squared, and I just bring down my equal sign. So now I've got f squared equals 336. Well, remember, I've got to get f completely by itself. And how do I cancel out a square? I find the square root of both sides. The square root and the square cancel, leaving me with f by itself. Bring down my equal sign, and the square root of 336 is 18.3 centimeters. So our leg here, our missing leg, is 18.3 centimeters. And that makes sense, because that's not our hypotenuse, that's not the longest side. 20 is still greater than 18, so our number still seems reasonable. So how about this example? Remember, the best thing to do is start with our hypotenuse. And which side's our hypotenuse? Well, here's our right angle box, and the side directly across from the right angle box is 15 inches. So that's our hypotenuse, and we'll put that under C. What about our sides? Our legs? Okay, well, one leg is 12, and the other leg is E. So let's put 12 under A, and let's put E under B. Now I want to be clear, it doesn't make a difference where I put the 12 and the E. It could have been either way. I could put E here and 12 here. It doesn't matter because remember, addition is commutative. The order doesn't matter. So I could switch these and it wouldn't make any difference at all. But now that we have this, let's just bring down our signs. So now we've got 12 squared plus E squared equals 15 squared. Well, I should just square what I can. 12 squared is 12 times 12, which is 144. E, I don't know what it is, so I can't square it, so I'll just bring down the entire thing, E squared. And 15 squared is 15 times 15, which is 225, and then I'll bring down my signs. So now I've got 144 plus E squared equals 225. But remember, I need to get E by itself, so I have to cancel out the 144. And how do I do that? I subtract 144 from the left side and 144 from the right side. So these 144s are going to cancel. And now I've got 225 minus 144, which gives me 81. Then I'll bring down my E squared because that's by itself now, and I'll bring down my equal sign. So now I've got E squared equals 81. Well, how do I cancel out the square? Well, the best way to cancel out a square is to find the square root of both sides. The square root and the square will cancel, leaving me with E by itself. I'll bring down my equal sign, and the square root of 81 is 9. Therefore, E equals 9 inches. This leg here in my right triangle is 9 inches. So here's your pause and practice. Just pause and practice. When you're done, unpause the video. After a 3, 2, 1 countdown, your answers will be displayed. Go. So let's go over our answers. For our triangle on the left, we're missing the leg, and the measure of that leg is 12.6 feet. For the triangle on the right, we're missing the hypotenuse, and the measure of the hypotenuse is 13.5 inches. So let's review this lesson. The formula used to determine any missing side of a right triangle is called the Pythagorean Theorem. The sides that create the right angle are called the legs. The side that is always located directly opposite the right angle and is the longest side is called the hypotenuse. In order to isolate the variable of a square, you must cancel each side of the square using the square root. In the Pythagorean theorem, the letters A and B represent the legs. In the Pythagorean theorem, the letter C is used to represent the hypotenuse. True or false? It doesn't matter in which order you put the legs. True, because like we said before, addition is commutative. If you have legs, let's say, of one being 4 and one being 9, then A could be 4 and B could be 9, or A could be 9 and B could be 4. It doesn't really matter because it's commutative.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And thanks for using Mr. Ace Math. Don't just pass math, ace it.